Welcome to the Possibility Action Network podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Middleton, aka Possibility Man. We're committed to bringing you guests who strive to better people's lives and serve as a force for good in the world. Our guest today is Steve Ozanich. He is a mind-body healing health consultant, presence and spirituality teacher, and author of 5 books. His first book, The Great Pain Deception, has become an international bestseller. His second book, Dr. John Sarno's Top 10 Healing Discoveries, was written in honor of his mentor. For over 2 decades, Steve has taught thousands of people how to heal themselves by increasing their conscious awareness and understanding. Steve, welcome to the show today.
Thank you. I appreciate the chance to be here to talk to you, and thank you for the good work that you're doing too.
All right. Look, I've been looking forward to talking with you for a long time. But first, an announcement for our listeners and our viewers. Follow, like, and share this podcast wherever you find it. In fact, we are co-creators. The more you spread the word, the more we'll be able to get guests like Steve or Ozanich. Hey, Steve, I wanted to ask you, from the outset, what started you on your health journey?
Well, I think I came into this world with an endowment of health problems right off the bat, from being a little boy to being in the hospital quite a bit, and throughout my life, struggling like a lot of people do, I guess. And but it hit a pinnacle, in the late 1990s. It really, my health was so poor that I really don't think I was going to make it at one point. I do believe I was dying at that point. And divine intervention,
Mm.
I read an article, and my life began to change. Not at first, though. The ego is very stubborn, very, very stubborn. As Wayne Dyer used to say, ego stands for edging God out.
Mm.
The ego
Yeah.
is itself only. So
Yeah,
I rejected it at first, but now I've been feeling great for 25 years.
that's fantastic. So, look, what kind of therapies did you search out before you met Dr. John Sarno?
Sure. Well, I grew up in the era, probably the peak, I would say the peak of the, pharmacomedical complex, this mechanical fixing of the body. In the 1960s, I was a little boy. In the 70s, I think it peaked at that point. They got away from these geniuses like Freud and Jung and Rogers and Adler. These people had figured out our health problems. And we started becoming very mechanically oriented with the body. We'll fix it. They cut the tonsils out of everybody when I was a little boy.
Yeah.
They cut the appendices out of everybody. And so I went through that gamut of things, just about everything you can imagine. I had tried from, hanging upside down to acupuncture to physical therapy. The only thing I didn't do was surgery, which was the only smart thing I've ever done in my life. I avoided
Yeah.
surgery. I don't know
Yeah,
why I did.
yeah,
I probably should have had it multiple times, but I avoided it. Maybe there was something
uh,
deep inside of me that knew a deeper truth at some point. Don't do it.
yeah.
And I tried just about everything, but only the work that you just mentioned saved my life.
Uh-huh. So you mentioned an article that you read, and I'm supposing now this is an article about or by Dr. John Sarno. What was that article about? Do you recall what it was about?
Oh, very well. Very well. I was probably at the peak of my suffering. I think it was about 1999. I couldn't stand up anymore, and but there was something in me that had the will to live. So I got down to my friend's store, and as I was leaving his store, he said, "Hey, I just read an article that reminded me of you." And so I kind of was bent over. I could hardly walk. I walked back to his desk there, and he showed me a book called Boardroom Classics. And it was an article by Dr. John Sarno. And it was written by one of his patients, actually, who owned Boardroom Classics, that he was crippled, and Dr. Sarno saved his life. And I read it, went home, bought Dr. Sarno's book, and I rejected it completely. like most people do. The majority of people reject what we're about to talk about today, but it works every time because the ego serves itself only, you know.
yeah.
And so then I got worse, and then desperation breeds open minds. You know, there's no atheists in foxholes, right? And so I went back to that book and I started to see that my suffering took me to the brink of stupidity and ignorance. And when I opened up to this book, I started to see the genius in it. And I began to heal. Now, it took me longer than most people because I didn't have anyone like me to come to. There was nobody
Understood.
doing the work except Dr. Sarno.
Yeah.
And so it took me a lot longer than most people that I work with. But, I'm here to help anybody who's listening here. Anybody, even if it's just one person today that we help, we did a good job today.
That's fantastic. Do you recall the title of the book, the first book you read about by Dr. John Sarno?
Yes, it was Healing Back Pain, which is the #1 back pain book in the history of the world. I don't think anything's ever going to knock it off of there, but I rejected it. And so when I got desperate later on, I went back to his very first book, which was called Mind Over Back Pain. It's a little teeny like pamphlet of a book. And I started to see it from a different viewpoint. And then I went back to Healing Back Pain. And that was the book that began my healing journey, you know, because it opened up a whole closet full of other books that saved my life as well.
That's fantastic. Look, we've mentioned Dr. John Sarno's name a few times. Tell us about him. Who was he?
Sure. He just passed away in 2017. It was one day before his 94th birthday. He was a medical doctor that worked, I think, since 1950. He started working at the New York University Medical Center in New York, at the Howard Rusk Center, which was the first outpatient center in America. And he was a true healer, a true doctor. He talked to his patients, which is doctors don't do anymore. He talked to them. And he was very frustrated with his patients' results when it came to things like back surgery and other surgeries. He noticed it really wasn't doing much. They would get a little bit of a result, but then it would come back again. And so he started to look into their charts. And he started to look and see these people have a lot of other health problems. You know, they don't have one health problem. They've also got sleep problems, anxiety problems, skin disorders, IBS problems, you know, a lot of allergies he noticed. And so he began to talk to them, which is unthinkable today. And he began to notice these patterns because he was a brilliant observer. He wanted to be known as a great observer in his life. And so I'm going to give him credit today for that. He was a brilliant observer. He began to notice the words they were saying to him. They were very conscientious people, you know. Goodists was the word that he used, goodism, leaning towards perfectionism in many cases. You know, they tend to worry a little bit more than most people. They tended to try to achieve at higher levels than most people. And so he began to put it together there was a lot of serendipity that happened in his own life as well. You know, he didn't come up with this just out of the blue. He talked to his patients. This is how he came up with this thing that we call TMS.
Yeah.
TMS, which has evolved itself over the years.
Yeah. So did you meet him personally? Did you actually?
I did not. At the time, he was not seeing anyone who was not in the tri-state area in New York because he wanted to follow up with people. And I live in Ohio, which wasn't the tri-state area, because I would have driven up there immediately to see him. But he didn't want to see people. So I kind of did it on my own, which is why it took so long.
Well, good for you. You've already mentioned TMS, and I would say, let me ask you, do you think this is one of Dr. John Sarno's greatest discoveries, TMS? And then also, what does TMS stand for?
Sure. Yeah, TMS will always be, you know, his label, his great life achievement, which was worthy of a Nobel Prize in medicine, but he can't get it posthumously, so he'll never achieve it, but he should have. TMS originally stood for attention myositis syndrome. He began to talk to his patients, and he began to realize through some of the psychologists that he worked with as well, these people are angry inside for trying to be good all the time, trying to be perfect all the time, trying to achieve all the time, trying to never fail all the time. And it was actually anger that was inside of these people. And so myo stands for muscle, myositis. But as he began to evolve himself, because he grew and learned, and his consciousness expanded as well throughout his life, he saw that this pain would attack more than muscle. It would attack nerves and tendons and ligaments and things like that. So they changed the term to myoneural. But then at the end of his life and his career, he saw that it was everything. It was, autoimmune diseases, cancers, things like that. So we changed that phrase TMS to the Mind-Body Syndrome, TMS, the mind. So it
I got
evolved
it.
like he did, and my work's evolved as well because we're all evolving consciously.
Okay. So when we refer to the mind-body syndrome, it's the same as referring to TMS. Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
depending on who you're talking to, there's different people doing this work that
Okay.
are at different levels themselves. Some people still
Mhm.
calling attention myositis syndrome, which we've moved on from that, but myoneural is the more common one.
Oh, okay. So let's talk about the let me repeat myself here, the mind-body syndrome. What is that?
Well, how much time do we have? I mean, I've written 3 books on it, and I still haven't even
Yeah.
touched it.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
big.
in a nutshell, in a
In a
nutshell.
nutshell, here, according to me and my work,
Okay.
it's a spiritual journey.
Hmm.
My company's called TMS Consulting, which stands for the Mind Body Spirit. Okay, I'm not stealing his thing. I'm advancing his work, but I'm using my own term for it. But it's
Yeah.
basically what he discovered there was that chronic pain. Well, let's take back pain, for example.
Hmm.
He proved clinically, beyond a shadow of a doubt, and so have the doctors that he trained, that herniated discs do not cause back pain. Stenosis does not cause back pain. Osteoarthritis in the back does not cause it. Crookedness of the spine, none of these things. The mechanical structure of the back is not the cause of the pain.
Huh.
Now that's probably doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but this has been clinically proven decades ago. But people are still, as we're speaking right now, people are getting operated on right now needlessly. Okay.
Yeah.
But he proved that it was actually anger that was unconscious within that individual. Unconscious meaning the person was not aware of the anger. They did not know it was there. Okay. This is where we lose a lot of people because they say, I'm not angry. That's right.
Yeah.
You're not angry because you have pain. The pain is substituting the anger.
Yeah.
It's a substitute. And so once he began to explain to the people, I don't think there's anything wrong with your shoulder or your knee or your elbow, whatever they've been having chronic pain in. I think this is your personality. This is an unconscious anger problem.
Yeah.
The people who believed that healed. Virtually
Hmm.
every single one of them is to quote him, virtually every single one.
Hmm.
People who did not believe that, they went on to suffer for decade
Hmm.
after decade after decade. So it was actually acceptance of it that was actually healing them, accepting the truth
Yeah.
at some point,
Yeah. Yeah.
And about 80% of people will not accept this, but
Right.
20% of people will heal virtually every single
Yeah.
time.
Yeah,
And
because
so,
it seems so simple. It's like it's so simple, right? And the
true.
simplicity is what may throw some people off. But
Yeah.
let's look at this a little more here. Am I hearing you saying that the brain plays a role in your symptom, but
Yes.
it's not the symptom? Let me try this. So, are you telling me that if a person has arthritis and he or she is talking with a surgeon, and the surgeon says we have to shave off that piece of arthritis in order for you to be better, are you telling me that the pain is not coming from the arthritis, that is coming from the brain?
Yes.
Help me
But
understand.
there are
Yeah.
many different types of arthritis. Some is very painful, like gout. Things like that. That can drop you to the floor. It's a different type of thing. That's more of an inflammatory process through diet and things like that. Now, the arthritis I'm talking about is osteoarthritis of the bones that you can see on X-rays and MRIs. What
Okay.
the brain does is it attacks those sites where the arthritis is there, where the narrowing is there, where the herniation is there. It goes after those sites. Okay. But it's actually this energy being held in there in the form of anger. It's being held in that area. And sometimes it's right at the level of the herniation or the stenosis, so which makes people think it's there. That's the cause of it. But these people heal regardless of the herniation. So we know that that's not a cause. It's just the source destination where the brain is attacking.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So is this why I think I read someplace or heard someplace that Dr. Sarno sometimes advised his patients to talk to their brain? Did I get that right? Did he say something
Yeah.
like that?
Yes, he said to give it a try.
Uh-huh.
You know, he said one of his patients yelled at her brain because she had been in chronic pain. I think she had hip pain. And she yelled at, "Stop, why are you doing this to me? Stop doing this to me." And it just suddenly went away. And so he said, "Well, you might as well give it a try." But I found in my work, it's better to talk nicely to yourself because these people are
Uh-huh.
beleaguered and they push themselves too hard and they're going it alone in life and they need to be kinder to themselves. It works
Uh-huh.
faster.
I see. So when someone has, I don't know, all sizes don't fit all, but if someone has fibromyalgia, it may be a brain issue, not a brain issue, but
Right. Yeah.
so, or when someone has arthritis or any kind of thing like back pain, that it may be a mind situation and not just a systemic problem that needs to be cut out in their body.
Right. Fibromyalgia is one of the paragons of TMS, like migraines are, or carpal tunnel syndrome, or plantar
Uh,
fasciitis. These things the doctors give names to, that way they can publish papers and make money off it. But those things are all mind body things, all of them, because
yeah.
we know because they heal every single time.
Yeah. I just had a crazy thought. May I just throw, you'll laugh at me, but I just had a
Okay.
crazy thought is like the Carpenter practiced TMS a few thousand years ago when he told a man who was paralyzed, pick up your bed and walk. And the paralysis was not in the body, it was in the mind. Just a crazy thought of mine.
Yeah, and I cited that in my first book as well. Jesus said to the man, "Do you want to get well?" I always thought, well, why would he ask him that?
Yeah.
Because, well, I know now because all people do not want to get well. That's why they're
Mm,
in surgery right now. Because getting rid of your pain is what the medical industry tries to get rid of your symptom, whether it's,
yeah.
pain or numbness or tingling or whatever. And getting rid of the symptom is not healing. Getting rid of the cause of the symptom is true healing.
Mm,
Okay. And that's
mm,
what they don't want to do. They don't want to truly heal. They just want to get rid of their symptom. And it always comes
mm,
back. As Dr. Sarno proved, it comes back in another form. If you have back surgery, it's coming back on another disc, like Tiger Woods did multiple times. It's coming
mm.
back in your shoulder. It's coming back in your knee. It bounds around in the body like whack-a-mole. Okay,
Mm.
that's where he should have won the Nobel Prize in medicine. He discovered our health problems all in one thing called TMS.
Wow. Yeah, you mentioned just now that people may say they want to heal, but they're not ready to heal. So, what is the readiness to heal? How does a person know whether they're ready or not? Or how can a person cultivate this readiness to heal?
That's a great question. I was just talking about this yesterday. The timing of everything is so important. I obviously wasn't ready to heal when I rejected his
Mm,
work originally, but sometimes this is from Dr. Sarno himself. He said the
mm,
tragedy is that people often have to get much worse before they'll open up to it, which I was one of those
mm,
people. And
mm.
so sometimes we have to get worse. Okay. Desperate maybe is a better word.
Mm.
Sometimes people are ready right off the bat. It's rare, but sometimes people are ready to go.
Yeah.
They look at it, oh my God, this is it. I get it, and they heal that day. You know,
Wow.
so readiness is what I believe is a spiritual readiness to begin to expand love and to expand your consciousness, to expand
Mm,
your awareness into greater peace and joy in your life.
mm,
Because those are the
mm,
things that heal you.
mm,
Doctors never heal anybody.
mm.
Benjamin Franklin said this in 1736, I think it was. God heals and the doctor takes the fee, he said. This is back in the
That,
1700s.
yeah, that's about right. That's about right. It sounds like, there's a lot of energy, that flows through the body, and some of these are spiritual, powerful energy that's transformative. That's
Yeah.
what I get a feel from when I listen to you and read about your work. So let me ask you this though. Because I think you've also said, talked about healing through understanding. Help us understand what you mean by that, and when Dr. Sarno might have meant by that.
Sure. He called it knowledge therapy.
Mm.
He said knowledge is the penicillin to this disorder, which means getting rid of health problems, knowledge. I'm calling it awakening, but we're talking about the same thing. We're just using different words here. It's about expanding your consciousness, if you will. And so, or from John 8:32 in the Bible, Jesus said, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free.
Yeah.
Okay. The truth is that meniscus or that rotator cuff or that herniated disc is not causing your pain. That's the truth. And when you understand that, you begin to heal. And so ultimately, it's just a realization that I'm already fine, but that I'm angry inside. I've got an anger issue or a fear issue, whatever you want to label. Unwanted emotion is a better way to cover everything. It's unwanted, you know.
You're making me aware that there is a deep, I mean, it's deeper than I at first imagined, spiritual connection of your work. Can you just expand upon that for me a little bit? The spiritual connection. Yeah.
Because this is, you know, I told Dr. Sarno I would carry on his work. I would be one of the people that would help. There's a bunch of us out there. And I've taken it to the spiritual level because that's where I'm seeing the greater success. Finding greater joy in your life, greater peace in your life. You know, it's getting closer to God. You know, God is light, is joy, is peace, is all these things, you know. So the closer you get to those things, and this is what I did actually 25 years ago, you know. I stopped trying to heal. I stopped going to doctors. I stopped reading the books, and I began to heal immediately as soon as I stopped trying to heal because there was nothing wrong with me. Okay. I started to have more fun in my life, you know, more joy in my life. And healing happened as a byproduct when I stopped trying to heal. There's a paradox there.
Yeah. Well, you know, the more I'm around you and just talking with you now, it's something it's like meditation for me, just for me now. And it's like I'm recognizing, look, I'm not broken. And just that kind of settles my whole body. It's like, I'm not broken, you know?
Yes. And that's simply as it can be put, I think, right there. You know, just people, I would say people heal 50% when they read the books immediately, when they realize, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. The doctor's been labeling things with this and this and this and this, and I've been trying to fix this and this, but I really didn't need to. It's just that there's, well, let's use Carl Jung's word, the brilliant Swiss psychiatrist. He said there's another person inside of us that we don't know about. That alone, it begins to heal people. It's the other side. You know, there's another person inside that you don't know about. He's very angry, very self-centered, very needy, you know, very lost at some point. That's the person we need to get to that's causing all of the health problems, not the conscious side. The conscious side is divinity. Divinity will never hurt us. The light will never hurt us. The other side, the unknown side, when you become aware of this other person, the healing starts to grow. And that's part of the spiritual process as well.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. And Dr. Sarno, you know, as an orthopedic surgeon, he got into this looking at the physical body and pain. But does this also apply to emotional challenges? For example, would you say that depression could be a TMS problem?
Yes. Well, things like anger, anxiety, depression, resentment, sadness, they are the pain. There's no difference. It's just that it's just those things, those emotions that you're talking about are manifesting physically, giving them names like fibromyalgia, carpal tunnel, plantar fasciitis, herniated disc, spondylolisthesis, spondylolysis, what, you know, any name label you want to give it. MS, cancer, things like this, IBS, you know, Crohn's disease, those are all emotional processes that are physically manifesting. And the world's beginning to see this because Dr. Sarno began a great awakening.
Yeah, more and more doctors are recognizing there's some type of mind-body connection. So from what, you know, just once again, I'm sensing here that the more we understand this, then the easier it is for us to overcome some of the conditions that held us back, be it physical or emotional. Yeah.
Sure, but remember the physical is emotional, is coming
Is
from
emotional.
emotional, but
Yeah.
you're not aware of it. That's the
Yeah.
problem. Like, for example, some people have come to me who their doctor told them they had chronic Lyme's disease,
Mm.
and that they could never heal because they waited too long, which is not true at all, but it's faulty advice. And it's TMS. If you get bit by a tick, you will get infected. You will take an antibiotic, it will go away every time. If the symptoms linger, that's your brain taking opportunity to latch onto the symptom to start TMSing, the verb for
Wow.
TMS. Now, I was
Yeah.
working with a lady in Canada, and she had it 7 years. She thought she was doomed to have this post tick thing, and
Mm-hmm.
she healed while I was talking to her. And she started
Mm.
to cry. She sat there and cried for a long time, the pain. She was going like this with her hand back and forth across her shoulders, where I guess where the pain was. It's gone, she said.
Yeah.
Sometimes it happens like that because she realized nothing was wrong with her.
Yeah. Wow. And that recognition can prompt the person to act, right? If you realize that there's nothing wrong with me, then, get up and start moving. It may be
Sure,
slow at first, but just keep at it.
sure.
Something like that.
Yeah, recognition. You're using that word. I'm using realization. We're talking about the same thing
Uh-huh.
here. There was a guy in our restaurant near me. He was limping towards me really badly, and I could see he was in pain because I lived that way for 30 years, and I've seen it
Mm.
thousands of people's faces. He finally got up to me, said, "Excuse me, but I heard you wrote a book on pain."
Uh-huh.
I said to him, "I did. When's your divorce?" I said to him, and he stood there with his mouth open. I guessed it right. He said,
Wow.
"Nobody knows but my wife and I can't understand how you knew that." I said, "Well,
Mm.
experience working with people. Something
Wow.
something was coming apart in that person's life. He wouldn't have been,
Mm.
we suffer when
Oh
things
gosh.
fall apart, and
Uh,
we heal when they come together in life."
yeah. Steve, that's, oh my gosh, that answers a lot of questions for a lot of people here. If something's happening in your body or your mind, think about what's happening in your life,
Sure, sure.
Yeah. Hey, look, I read somewhere, and if I got this wrong, just correct me, but I read somewhere that Dr. Sarno said of you that you humanized his work. To quote him, Steve Ozanich humanized my work. Did he say that?
Yeah, he told me that. Yeah, he told me
Yeah.
that. I took his 4 books and I put them all
Mm.
into my book, The Great Pain Deception, to show
Okay.
how my life, how his work, how my life fit like a template inside of his work. Exactly.
Wow.
Everything he said came true in my own life. And so
Uh-huh.
I took the words off of his books in my life, and I became the human part of his work,
Uh-huh.
how it
That's
actually
what he
works.
meant. Okay, that's what he meant. Wow. Wow. Since we've touched upon your pain story from since you started. Tell us your story. Walk us through that.
Sure, I've told it many times, but I'm happy to tell it again if it helps anybody listening to this. Um, I had back pain for 30 years, just under 30 years, and I had tried everything. I mean, the gamut of everything. And I didn't know at the time that it was making me worse. I didn't know that it was keeping me in pain. Just
Mm.
trying to fix something that's not needed to be fixed. But I had a series of tragedies in my life, traumas throughout the 80s when I started to get really worse. And I was in the hospital all the time with all kinds of health problems,
Mm.
swollen glands, vision problems, vertigo problems, you name it. I had a couple hundred. But the
Wow.
back pain was what I call my comfort zone, what I always fell back onto. And so it got so bad that my leg started to become paralyzed in the late 1990s, where my foot began to drop it's called foot drop. And I lost all the reflexes in that leg, and I couldn't pick my foot up anymore, and I lost my calf and my hamstring, and all I had was my quadricep and my knee, so I could stand on it, but I had to drag it. Well, I went to the doctor, and they did an MRI, and of course it showed a pinched nerve, ostensibly. And of course they recommended immediate surgery, or I would be paralyzed, and for life. Well, that was when my friend introduced me to the article on Dr. Sarno. And I started thinking, well, I don't agree with this guy, but he nailed my personality, my
Mm.
personality of a driven person to succeed and to be perfect and to keep people happy, goodest. And so when I got worse, I was trying to avoid surgery. I got much worse. I couldn't get out of bed at one point. I was down to like 50 pounds. I went back to his work and looked at it, and I saw how brilliant it was. I guess I was ready at that point, right? And I began to heal. I began to take his advice, which was to become more physical. I was laying around resting my whole life, resting my back. And he said, you're going to get worse as long as you rest it because there's nothing wrong. This is an emotional process. So I started to try to golf again, and it spiked. The pain spiked. It hurt pretty bad. But over time, it began to wane and more and more. And one day in the year 2000, I realized, hey, I don't have any health problems. Zero.
Wow.
And so I stopped to reflect at that moment. When was the last time I had any health problems? I couldn't remember because I stopped thinking about my body. I stopped trying to heal. I started to move back into the present moment. So it was ultimately presence that healed me. It used to be called mindfulness. The presence of being in the moment in life, this moment, not trying to fix something, not trying to worry about something or project anything or remember anything, just being here in this moment. And all my health problems disappeared. So it was ultimately presence that healed me.
Wow.
Or God.
Yeah, Steve, that's so powerful and hopeful, for me and for thousands of people who will watch or listen to this. Now on YouTube, I think you have a site that's called the TMS Wall of Victory. Is that your site or is that someone else's?
Yeah, that's my site. I was helped by some great marketers in the world, Joe Polish being one of those, and one of his friends who was probably the top book marketer in the world at the time. And he said, you got to show these people all these success stories that you're seeing here. Because I was seeing them constantly. And he goes, show them because it's free on YouTube to put them up there. So I started this thing called the TMS Healing Wall of Victory. And I'm putting up people who were told by their physicians that they could never heal. And they're all healed now. Okay, so never listen to someone who says you can't heal. Anybody can heal, all right? But,
wow.
So anybody can go there and look at those stories and maybe identify with some of those people.
Wow. So can you think of maybe 2 or 3 selected stories of where people healed? Just a couple of them.
Sure. One comes to mind now. She went deaf. She lost her hearing and she was from California. And so like you mentioned earlier, I asked her what was going on in her life at that time. Because I'm not a doctor. I'm not allowed to diagnose people with things. I don't diagnose people. I'm a teacher.
Yeah.
And so I said, what's happening in your life? And she said, well, she heard that her brother was going to die. He'd received a terminal diagnosis. He didn't die, which is good news, but she heard that. Well, just as Dr. Sarno had proven clinically, her brain did her a favor and shut off this hearing gate because she didn't want to hear it.
Wow.
It was too painful to hear emotionally. And so shut it off. Well, once she understood that knowledge therapy, right, or awareness, it came back pretty quickly. And she's very happy. She sends me beautiful emails randomly thanking me. She's going to do a video for my Wall of Victory at some point as well. That one comes to mind because it's so bizarre, So, but it's so symbolic too, right?
Yeah.
Don't hear it, too painful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I tell you what, you can get so many, I get so many ideas from that, about what the mind will do if it feels that something is harmful. The mind can actually shut some things off. So
it's trying to help you. This is what Dr. Sarno, it's trying to help you cope through a difficult time. My vision, I lost my vision halfway up. I saw a black bar. I couldn't see people's heads. It's just a black bar. It's called scotoma or tunnel vision, some people call it, but which means scotoma means that you see only what you want to see.
Okay.
It's very simple. I was having severe tragedies in my life at that time, and I just didn't want to see it. My life.
I got you.
Back
I got you.
Yeah. Financial thing.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, can you think of maybe 1 or 2 more examples from the Wall of Victory or work with your clients?
I mean, I have thousands of these. A couple drove in from Pennsylvania into Ohio to take me to dinner because both of their cancers disappeared.
Wow.
Both their cancers disappeared.
Oh my gosh.
MS symptoms in the brain. There's so many. But
Yeah.
the bizarre ones are the ones that come to mind. They're very bizarre. You know, I
Yeah.
worked with a guy who had head drop. He couldn't pick up his
Uh-huh.
head. Like I had foot drop. Some people have hand
Mm.
drop, and they think it's a pinched nerve. It's not a pinched nerve. The nerve's not getting any oxygen or blood to it, so there's no
Uh-huh.
strength there, and so it begins to drop. Okay,
Wow.
but yeah, there. I mean, there's one from Wisconsin that's one of my favorites. He's on my wall of victory. He had an eating disorder. He was really thin. I could see his face was extremely thin, like he hadn't eaten anything. And he said that he was only eating chicken and rice for 5 years in a row. That was all he could eat every day, which I told
Mm.
his doctors told him he had a histamine intolerance, which is not true. But I told him you can eat anything you want. You become a
Mm.
prisoner of your mind. I need you to
Mm.
free yourself from your mind. Well, he healed. Now he's eating anything that
Mm.
he wants. Okay, because
Ooh.
he would have reactions to it. I guess he would have to go to the hospital with swelling and pain. I said, listen,
Yeah.
you can eat anything you want. Your doctor has made, with the help of your doctor, you
Mm.
become a prisoner of your mind,
Yeah.
and he's eating anything he wants. He just told me recently he helped some guy in Australia who thought he was being burned by the sun. And he hadn't been outside in 5 years. He'd been living in a hotel for 5 years. And he was telling him, you know, you can go out in the sun. It's your mind telling you can't do that.
Yeah.
And so
Huh.
I guess the guy's fine now.
Yeah. Wow. So it seems like we have, thinking about Dr. Sarno's work and the work of people like you, the couple of models here. We got the medical establishment and the way it approaches conditions, and then we have TMS, the TMS approach, different approaches, right?
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
And Dr. Sarno was always took the high road. You know, he told me, Steve, don't criticize doctors. They just don't know.
Uh-huh.
Don't know. And, you know, and it's like slapping a baby for crying. The baby doesn't know. You can't do that. You know.
Mm.
And
Okay.
so it's the wrong diagnosis was his discovery. Like back surgery, it's not the wrong modality, it's the wrong diagnosis. The herniated disc is not
Mm.
causing the back pain. You know,
Yeah.
it's almost always a TMS diagnosis. And virtually everybody I've met in 25 years, and like I said, I don't diagnose people, but their doctors have.
Right.
I've got a
Right.
list, I've got a list of 1,000 symptoms that doctors label
Mm.
as they ended up TMS.
Yeah. So when you say that it's a TMS problem, what does that mean?
Oh, it to look at it from Dr. Sarno's eyes, it
Mm.
was a distraction. Your brain
Mm.
is distracting you with the physical thing from the
Mm.
emotions. So you don't ever have to experience the emotions because the emotions are either too dangerous, too powerful, or too threatening to us. Like
Uh-huh.
suicidal people, a lot of suicidal people will contact me. And so their brain will create a pain to block that awareness of that I want to commit suicide, things like that. Or I
Wow.
want to leave my family or something like that, you know, something horrific.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
always horrific. Sometimes it's just death by 1,000 paper cuts, you know. The
Mhm.
person is pretty balanced in their life, but they just got too much going on, you know. They've got
Yeah.
5 companies they're trying to start, which is Joe Polish's friends, right? Starting 5 companies. Or they've got 7 kids and things like that. And it's
Yeah.
just too much at some point, and the demands
Mhm.
on them are just overwhelming them.
Yeah.
So the brain
Yeah.
gives them migraines to knock them down, so they have to lay down for days at a time.
Yeah.
Gives them what's called Western meditation in the East. They call it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
your back pain is your Western way of meditating. you
Yeah.
know, it forces you
And
out.
I want to make sure that I get this and others get this as well. Are you telling us that sometimes if a person has an event they find scary, tragic, or whatever, the brain may step in to protect them by diverting their attention by offering something else to look at?
Yes, that's a pretty good description. I just worked with a guy a couple weeks ago, and he was telling me during COVID
Mm.
that he was at the grocery store and he walked around the corner and he saw these people wearing masks and he went
Mm.
into full back spasm right in the store.
Mm.
The fear spikes about the virus and the anger,
Yeah.
that what's happening to the world and things like that. And so, yeah, it can
Yeah.
happen instantaneously. You know,
Yeah.
but there's a
Oh
girl
gosh.
called Victory who had one of the back
Yeah.
spasms when she was told that her dad was just got out of the World Trade Towers on 91101.
Mm.
He was a fireman, and as soon as they told her your dad just narrowly escaped, she went into full back spasm in school. He said,
Wow.
spike of anger.
Yeah, that reminds me, I think I was having a conversation with someone recently who said they had a fight with someone, an argument with someone, and they had a migraine headache. Isn't that something? It's
Yeah,
like, wow.
it's protecting that other person from the rage from that person. In other words,
Yeah.
instead of externalizing the anger and hitting that other person,
Uh,
they want to be a good person. They internalize the anger and they hurt themselves at some
yeah.
point.
So, look, so do you advise people to not suppress their anger? I'm not talking about go fight somebody, but how does a person let go of that emotion that they're stuffing down?
Yeah, now that's a big topic itself, anger, because a lot of people say, I know TMS is right, Steve. I know I have TMS. There's nothing wrong with me, but how do I get rid of it, right?
Uh,
Well, a lot of people make the mistake of trying to release the anger,
mm,
and what it does is it conditions it to make the anger stronger in the end.
mm,
Like if you yell or scream or something like that, you're developing deeper neural pathways in your brain, or what Yogananda called, deeper groove on the record player. You're
uh-huh.
conditioning it to be next time you see the person, you're going to hit them immediately because you've been practicing,
Uh,
rehearsing it.
yeah.
The idea, as David Hawkins says, is, to get rid of the energy that's behind the anger. Or as Thich Nhat Hanh, I went with Thich Nhat Hanh's methodology, which was to transmute the anger into
Mm,
beneficial things, to use
mm,
the anger for the benefit of mankind. I think that's a better way of
mm-hmm.
putting it. Transmutation.
Oh gosh. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Go serve, go to the soup kitchen, do something. Yeah. Read a
Exactly.
poem. I
Because
love
anger,
it. I love
that's
it.
right, because anger is energy. That's all it is.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. Yeah. Hey, Steve, I think you've been referred to as the TMS Whisperer. If so, what does that mean?
Well, let me tell you what it means. I never referred myself to that. A lot of people did early on. I didn't realize that was still up there. A lot of people saying because I would talk to them and they were getting better, like Dr. Sarno did.
Uh,
Just I'm told this through other people. It's the way that I'm explaining it. They'll say,
mm,
I've read, I understood everything that you told me, but the way you said it was what helped me. And I don't know,
yeah,
I'm just being me, of course, it's just me.
yeah, yeah,
Something about the way I'm saying it, people are telling me, is connecting with them very deeply after years,
yeah,
decades of trying to heal sometimes.
yeah,
So I don't know. I know that to be me is the most important thing that I can do for this universe, is what God made
yeah.
me to be. And so I'm just the more I am me, the more people heal.
I love it, and I can feel it. I sense it. Is there something positive for sure? I want to talk just for a moment about your books. Not all of them, just a couple of them. The first book, The Great Pain Deception. First, what did you mean by that title?
Good question. Not a lot of people ask, but it took a long time to come up with that title.
Uh,
I used the operative word there is deception, of course.
mm,
And there's three reasons I use the word deception. The first one is that there's not many, but there's a few doctors that are, corrupt people that know that there's nothing wrong with you and they're still operating anyway. They used to operate on molars and wisdom teeth for the dentist when there was no cavities at all. There's a few of those. So I use that
yeah.
word that way. The second reason I used the word deceptive was that was Dr. Sarno's discovery that your brain is deceiving you into thinking something's wrong with your body when it's
Ah,
not a body problem, it's an emotional process, or as I'm saying, a
yeah,
spiritual problem. Okay.
yeah.
And the third reason I use the word deception is because of an old psychological term that I discovered called self deception.
Mm,
Self deception means that you believe that the lie is true. In
mhm.
other words, for example, people say, my marriage is perfect.
Yeah,
I'm completely happy. And then you start getting
yeah,
into it, and their marriage is not perfect. They're not
yeah.
happy at all. They hate their marriage, but the ego wants everybody to think the marriage is good. Like on Facebook, everybody on Facebook wants you to think their life's perfect. And it's all one
That's
party.
right. That's right. Yeah. I could see that because oh gosh, I was going to say something. Well, it kind of slipped away. Uh, oh my, I'll come back, Steve. But go ahead. Let
Deception
me ask you
means
another question. Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll come back to. But so in the book, then, what are one or two things that you want readers to really get from the book?
oh boy, that's a good question. this may be the first time I've had to think about it. You're going to stretch my brain out here.
Mhm.
I guess the first one that comes to my mind, I guess, is that if I can heal, anybody can heal.
Mm,
If you read my book, a lot of people are surprised that I'm alive today, you know.
mm,
So if I can heal, you can heal. The second thing what comes to mind is that there's nothing wrong with your body. You know, there's nothing wrong.
yeah.
Don't think of these things. If you get a health problem, if I get a health problem, which is possible in the future, if I have a tragedy in my life or another trauma, right? But if I get a health problem, I'm not going to think it's a body problem ever. I'm going to immediately think, oh, what's going on that I'm not aware of in my life? That's the first thing I would do immediately.
Yeah.
What's happening in my life that I've blocked from my own awareness because it's either too painful or too threatening to me, right? That's the first thing I would do. I would probably run immediately to a psychologist, not to a doctor if I develop
Yeah.
something here, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah, unless they break a bone, of course. Sometimes you need
Yeah.
doctors.
Of
I should
course.
probably
Yeah.
say this too. This is not an anti-doctor message. I hope people don't go away from today thinking
Yeah.
this is not an anti-doctor message. This is an anti-diagnosis message. Okay,
Yeah.
we need good doctors. This is not a slam on physicians. I have a lot of
Understood.
doctors hire me to help them with their own patients. There are a lot of good doctors out there that are picking up on this. I've helped a lot of them to heal, and they're helping their patients to heal. And so but it's not a body problem, you know, basically, unless you've broken
Mm.
something, of course.
Understood. Understood. You know, in the other book I mentioned in the introduction, Dr. John Sarno's top 10 healing discoveries. What are one or two things that you wanted readers to get from there?
Sure, I wrote that book as an homage to him, as,
Yeah.
as a thank you, because people can be intimidated by the work because he wrote 4 books himself, and I think there are some people who are maybe too intimidated by it because so many people are talking about it from different perspectives. You know, I'm bringing in my own perspective to his work.
Mhm.
So I wanted to simplify it because we like simple things, right? We remember some things, right? And so I thought I'm going to break this down to the top 10 list, like the old David Letterman show used to do, you know, top 10.
Mhm.
And of course you can't quantify emotions here, but I did it for teaching purposes. And I listed them what, in my opinion, Steve O's opinion, what are the top 10 things that he did for our world. Okay. And so it took me a while to try to come up with an order. And of course, you can argue, you can debate them, and the person's probably right, you know. But in my opinion, that was the top 10 things. And the number one was the symptom imperative phenomenon that he called the symptom imperative. That
Mm.
that you have surgery on one thing, and the person believes that the surgery worked, and they'll say, "Oh, my surgery worked," but now they're limping because their foot hurts or their ankle hurts or something. The
Mm.
surgery did not work. Your
Mm.
brain shifted strategies. It's now moved the pain to somewhere else in the body, like whack-a-mole.
Wow.
That I believe was worthy of a Nobel Prize in medicine.
Mm.
But like I said, he will never get it. I think some of the other
Yeah.
things, the placebo effect, most surgeries are placebos, like he proved there, but the people actually think that it worked, but it did not.
Yeah.
Like I have a
Yeah.
friend now, he had a hip and a new knee, now he's going to get another new knee. He has no idea because he won't talk about TMS that there's nothing wrong with the hip or knee, that it's just
Mm.
brains just switching strategies. I believe
Mm.
that was the greatest discovery. And I was told by a couple of Dr. Sarno's friends that he loved that book and that he read that book, that little book often, which really honored me. And before he died,
Wow.
he sent me a letter before he died, and it's hanging in my hallway, a beautiful handwritten letter
Mm.
thanking me for
Mm.
that book. So I got it. I nailed it. He was happy
Yeah.
with the book. Let's put it that way.
That's fantastic. That is so fantastic. I'm telling you. But Dr. Sarno was a medical doctor. He was traditionally trained. He was an orthopedic surgeon who probably did some surgeries. Why didn't the medical community, you think, embrace him? He was one of them.
He was a physiatrist, which is like a rehab physician, I guess, or something
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yes, they mocked him. They made fun of him. They would turn their back on him when he walked into the cafeteria, so he stopped eating with them. And his big sin to them was healing millions of people. They were offended
Wow.
by that. They
Isn't
were
that something?
because they want to treat people, and he wanted to heal them.
Hmm. Well, look, I got to ask you, Steve-O, the great question of the day. You know, there's a great question on the minds of a lot of people out there, and it is it possible for me? What would you tell them?
Is it possible to heal?
Yeah, to heal.
With God, all things are possible.
Mm.
If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe it either. That somebody could heal while I'm talking to them after decades of suffering. Or this guy sent me his book. He had months to live, and he's fine now. Death of a Cancer Patient, it was called. And he crossed the word patient off, and it's called The Death of Cancer on the cover. And it was a spiritual awakening for him, and his body healed itself. You know, like the lady who lost her hearing, on and on, the guy who couldn't eat food. Anybody can heal. I'm not saying everybody will heal, but anybody can heal. And there's a big difference because, as Dr. Hawkins said, the ego doesn't give a damn about your life. It doesn't care about your life at all. It will take you to the grave before you'll admit that nothing's wrong with your body. It will take you to an early grave before you'll admit that your marriage is broken. It will take you to the grave. It doesn't care.
So how can a person, or is it possible for a person to assure, I mean, I'm trying to find a word, can't say guarantee, but that's too strong. How can a person raise the stakes to give them a better chance of getting what you got or what the guy got who wrote the cancer book?
Sure. It's always going to come ultimately from the destruction of the ego, destroying the egoic mind. Okay, it's on its own. It's totally unconscious. It's constantly going. It's doing what it wants. It's always reacting to the world constantly. It's never aware. You can tell the people that are ego-driven, they're always constantly reacting to the world. They're reacting to their senses instead of awakening to that. But they're addicted to these things. And so I think the thing that helped me to heal, which may answer this question, is that it was Dr. Sarno's examples of healing. I told him, I said, I don't think I would have healed without you giving all of these examples of people healed. It kept showing me, oh, okay, I can do this. I can do this, you know. And so you're building up your confidence. You're getting rid of doubt, because the ego wants you to doubt constantly. I can't heal. It's not possible for me. It's too long or whatever. But so yeah, we ultimately have to get rid of the ego, which we call presence today, becoming more and more presence, or more and more awake, more and more awake.
I love it. Steve, is there anything else in your heart that you want to share today that I haven't asked you about?
There's a lot of things, but the first thing that comes to my mind is what a good person you are.
Who?
You. I don't know if you realize it. You're a good man. We've talked before this.
Yeah.
You're a good person. You're trying to help people. And this is how the world should run, right here. Trying to help another person, because it's all about helping somebody. I don't have to do this work. I can just go, you know, live a simple life and go golfing and play guitar and things like that. I don't have to, but I have an obligation. I would like to see people's consciousness levels raised closer and closer and higher to the infinite mind, you know, to perfect intelligence, you know. And so the fact that you've invited me here is very beautiful.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, I'm so glad that you were here, and I am just confident that thousands of people around the world are going to benefit from what you shared here today. So thank you for being with me, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to help some people. I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, you've been listening to the Possibility Action Network podcast. Our guest today has been Steve Ozanich. I'm your host, Stephen Middleton. Until next time, good day.
You are not alone. Just keep on, keep on, keep on going. Just press on, press on, press on.